What is happening, everybody, man? Thank you guys jumping into another episode of Export Mentors Live. We got the one and only Mr. Knolly Williams back in the house. Knolly, man, appreciate you jumping in. And man, I always look forward to our conversations. Man, selfishly, I always walk away with a couple pages of notes. So I know today's going to be no different. And I'm extremely excited to jump in.
What is cooking in the kitchen today? Let's go. I'm excited, man. I'm excited. It's been too long, and yeah, I'm fired up. I'm fired up.
Yeah, as you should be. So, Knolly, over 1,000 homes sold, 9 books written, which I think is even more of an impressive accomplishment. Take us back before all of that, right? What did the business look like early on? What did you realize that working harder wasn't going to get you where you want it to go?
I realized that in the music business. So when I got in the music industry, I was about 13 when I decided to get into the rap game. And I went full in at about 22. That was my full-time thing. I started a record label, and man, I worked all the time. I worked, but I loved it. As a 15, 16, 17-hour days, nothing. That's nothing. And, 20-some years old, 22 years old at the time. And I said, I'm going to work really, really, really hard for 10 years. I'm going to stack my chips, and then I'm going to cash out. In fact, it's funny because when I was about 3 or 4 years into the business, because before I got my deal with EMI Capital Records, I was about 3 or 4 years in, and this guy, one of the owners of a really large rap magazine, approached me, and he said, "Man, would you take $1 million?" I was like, "Nah, I ain't gonna take it." And so it's all hindsight, right? But at the end of the day, John, what happened with me was I ended up the music industry changed around year 8. Okay, so up until then, everything was good, but around year 8, it started getting real hard because MP3 came out, everything was digital, and people didn't have to pay for music. So you had to figure out how to make money as a record label. We had 18 artists, 14 employees. And at the end of the day, man, our sales went down 70% over the span of about 6 or 7 months. And we had to lay everybody off. We had a 10-acre property with a 6,000 square foot home with a recording studio and a office building on the property. We pretty much lost that. It was right into bankruptcy it was in foreclosure. We sold it, and I had my tail between my legs. So when that happened, John, to be honest, man, I said, there's got to be a better way. because I was always told, if you just work hard, if you struggle, if you put that grit into it, it'll pay off. And sometimes it does, but that's a big gamble, man. And it's not one that I was willing to take the second time around. So when I got in this game, I leveraged everything. Yeah.
And it kind of feels, Knolly, is just kind of reflecting, listening to you, share the story. How do you navigate when the game changes right underneath your feet? Right. So it's like you said, it just changed, just overnight changed. So I think
that's what's about to happen to the real estate game. We all know.
Exactly. So how do you prepare or think about or navigate when the guidelines and the rules and the game changes?
I think a couple of things. One, you remember there was a book out a long time ago called Who Moved My Cheese?
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about that, so the cheese is still there. It's just moved. When we went through back in 2008, something like that, I started doing short sales in 2004. And I did those for a good 8-9 years. It was from about probably 2007 to about 2013. It was really, really, really my thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I adapted with the market. I started off with expireds. I flipped it to short sales. Then we went back traditional. So the thing is, you've got to be able to adapt with the market. And I think about it like this. You know how you see those nature shows and there's like a herd of gazelles and they're following these gazelles? They don't stay in one place, man. They go where the money is. Okay. They go where the food is, right? They go
Mhm.
where which is for them it's grass and water. So when the water hole shrinks up and when the grass goes dry, they don't just stick around like, well, what's going on? How am I going to make it? No, they go to where, because there's always abundance. This is what I learned, John, early on. Abundance always exists. Let me
Mm.
say it again. Abundance always exists. You just got to find where the abundance is now. It may not be the same watering hole or the same patch of grass that it was yesterday. It might be in a different location. If you find it, it's there. Trust me. And gazelles know that. They know that grass is somewhere. They just go find where the new grass is. You see what I'm saying? They're
I
very,
do.
very
That's great.
adaptable and
Yeah.
mobile. Hmm. That's
Yeah.
how we
That's a
got to
great
be, man.
analogy. I love
Hmm.
that. So one question from the past, and then we'll jump in, kind of the focus around today's conversation. How do you walk away from $1 million? Because I'm sure for you at that time was a lot of money. And how do you say no to something that could be, a significant change? And one story, one of my, childhood friends, best friend, best man at my wedding, um, he had a bunch of land. His dad passed, so he took over everything, right? And
Hmm.
he had this very desirable 50-acre tract that aligned right next to the largest casino. So now he's dealing with, one of the tribes and negotiating and end up selling. And
Hmm.
for him at the time, I mean, it was life changing. A million
Sure.
dollar paycheck to sell 50 acres was life changing for him. And, he immediately took the money, reinvested the money right back into real estate. He did really, really well for
Yep.
himself with that. But most people, they're throwing seven figures at you. Most people are going to say yes. How do
Hmm.
you have maybe the restraint to not take the money? Like, how does that, how did you process and work through that?
Well, that it's interesting because a year after that, let me see, it was maybe a couple of years later, I was making 150 grand a month, in the business. So, but honestly, it was just a matter of my strength of vision. When you have a strength of vision, you have a vision, and that vision is very strong. You know where you want to be, you know where you're going, and then you don't let anything deter that or falter it. What I didn't factor into though, John, and now I kind of there's these outliers, these anomalies, right? That like it wasn't even on the horizon. I mean, literally, we had gone from cassette to CD, and that was a long transition. You know what I'm saying? They kind of coexisted for a long time. So when
Mhm.
digital came along, it was like, okay, we'll adapt eventually. I mean, it's not, but I mean, it just went like that, bro. And so there's always those variables. You got to be real careful because I think a lot of it for me, to be honest, was just cockiness and arrogance. I was like, man, nah, fool. When you're young and you're like,
It's that
you
belief in yourself.
this is my baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm
Mhm.
not selling my baby. You know what I'm saying? Whereas from a business standpoint, it's you've always got to make the right business decision, right? And so, but I wasn't really going at it from business. It was more, uh, I was thinking about it. I think more as an artist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Artistic.
Yeah. This is your art. This is your
But
baby.
but that's all
It's
hindsight. Yeah.
of course, of course. And it's so funny that this is my baby because I saw the model explained
Mm-hmm.
early in the path that we were building. In fact, it was because we came over in 17. It might have been 2016 that we got a recording of a recording
Mm-hmm.
over somebody's shoulder, watching the
Wow.
model be explained,
Sure.
and somebody was recording it. They sent us that recording. Nolly, I get 10 minutes in and I turn it off. This
Yeah.
was 2016.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the reason
yeah,
I turned it off is because it's exactly what you just said. I had a conviction about what we were building and what we were doing.
yep,
And this was our baby. We're right. Nobody else is right. And so I think the ego gets in the
yeah,
way, just like you said, as a young artist, you just have this belief about yourself. I believe you have to have it or you're not going to get anywhere.
yeah. You
Especially,
have to have it to an extent, to where it doesn't become it doesn't cross the line into foolishness.
mm,
You know, from wisdom to foolishness. And I think from a business standpoint, sometimes I say, hey, I should have took the money and run. You know what I'm saying? Because if you think about it, I mean, it's that's really when you think about a business, and which I didn't know at the time, the whole purpose. A business is like a garden. You plant your seeds, you you basically let the fruits come up, the vegetation come up, and then you harvest it. And so I didn't really have an exit strategy. I wasn't even thinking about harvesting. I was just
mm,
having fun, building it. But that is the purpose of a garden, is to harvest. So pretty much all businesses, EXP is quite different with the revenue share, because that is, I mean, it's just like a never ending faucet if you build it right. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like nothing. It's like no other money that I've ever earned. I know you probably feel the same way.
Mhm,
It's not like it's almost like play money. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? I mean, it spins real, but it almost feels. You know how when you first heard the model, it sounded like it was just too good to be true. It couldn't be
Correct.
possible.
Yeah.
It feels like that for me every day. And I'll go back. I'll say, I still remember when I first heard the model explained. I didn't want to hear it. I had zero interest in listening to it, but my buddy almost like bullied me into watching it, because he was like, "Man, you claim to be my friend and you won't even watch a stinking 20-minute video?" It was more than 20 minutes, but I think that's how he put it. I was like, "All right, I'll watch your stinking video just to basically say I saw it. Now, here's the bird, get out of my
Yeah.
face." So I actually, back then it wasn't even a video. It was like an audio, like a slide deck
Mm.
with audio running. And so I went to a quiet room. I sat in my chair, my little TV chair, and I started playing this thing, man. And I started listening. And then when he got into revenue share, I said, "Well, nah, that's not even possible." And I was not I wasn't drinking the KW Kool-Aid. I had it on IV drip. Okay.
He
I
was just
wasn't
there.
going anywhere. I was
Yeah.
recruited to Keller Williams by Gary Keller. Okay. We live
Mm.
in the same town. I became the number one real estate agent in Austin, Texas in 2008. Austin Business Journal had the big, ceremony. They out of 9,800 agents, I'm number one, 96 transactions as a solo agent that year. And so, I'm riding a high on it, man. I'm with Remax. I'm loving it. But then Gary called me, and he had a very compelling offer. I ended up speaking in over 100 cities with different market centers and stuff like that with my seminars. And it was very lucrative. But when I saw this, I sat there upset, not wanting to watch it, feeling like, just so I could tell my guy without lying to him that I did see it, because I knew he would ask me some key questions about it.
Yeah.
I'll take your 20-minute quiz, you sucker. Um, but it just messed me up, man. I couldn't sleep for 100 days, and I joined 100 days later, but I couldn't sleep for those 100 days. You know what I'm saying? And I joined 99 days too late. I should have joined the next day. You know what I'm saying? But no, but back to what you're saying. We have to use a lot of wisdom and discernment and foresight, to make that right decision. If that million, should I take the million or should I wait? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
You nailed it, and I wrote it down. You had such strength and conviction in your vision. You had a vision.
Yeah.
And I think where people take the wrong deal is that they don't have that conviction or strength and a vision of the future. And I
Yeah.
think that's where they they see it as a potential off ramp and they take it, and they don't even know that, if they go down 2 more exits, they have a better off ramp than the off
That's
ramp
right.
that they think they're taking. So
That's right.
that's really good. So
Yeah.
Knolly, let's dive in really deep into the topic. You've hit milestones in your career. Number one, planet for KW in the market. You were years ahead with the short sale route. So you've hit milestones that agents would consider, dude, that's a ceiling, not a
Yeah.
floor for you,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
these 5 big rocks framework,
Yeah.
when did those start to take shape, and what were you seeing in your business that made you identify these 5 things specifically?
Honestly, it took place after 9 books. I've always written my books. Like, for example, like I've always written, my books are pretty much all how to. So my first book was 7 Days to Success with Short Sales. I took it out of print because I was like, short sales will never come back. Well, guess what? Okay. Anyway, when I wrote this book, Success with Listings, that one I wrote after I'd already been in the business 10 years, already did 1,000 deals. I chronicled how I did it, like step by step by step. And then there's several others that I've written for different reasons. But I started thinking, if somebody would just really pin me down, maybe somebody doesn't want to read a 340-page book, okay? Because a lot of people don't, all right? And I get that. If they were just to pin me down and said, man, just give me the 5 big things to do, what would those be? So I actually sat with myself earlier this year and I wrote it down. I wrote it down like if I could just give you 5 things to do. Now there's a whole bunch of things that you should be doing, and mindset's a big thing. I've been on this whole mindset journey, as many of us, in this space have, since I was probably 17, 18. I pretty much read a book a week. Uh, I went down some very deep rabbit holes with the subconscious mind and, neuro linguistic programming and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, some 7-year, 8-year, 9-year rabbit holes that I've gone down, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm a lifelong learner, just like you. But so that's how it came shape, man. It was what's the lazy woman or the lazy man's sort of guide to success? What would those 5 rocks be? And so that's what I came in, and everything that I preach and teach and breathe and live always centers around listings. John, it has to, because listings is the real estate game. It's not a part of the game or a piece of the game. There was a study done back in 2003 of the top 100 real estate agents in the world, in the United States. Okay, not the world, United States, the top 100. And when that study was published, it came down to 100% of the top 100 real estate agents in America focus on listings. They're listing focused. Okay. And that study
100%.
became a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. That was a research project. A lot of people don't know that. But that's something that the reason why Gary wrote it was because in 2002 or 2001, they just stopped growing. They grew to like 14,000 agents and just stopped growing. And they couldn't figure out how to grow. And so they threw 100 ideas on a board, and they came up with one idea, was to write a book, do a research project, which later became a book, to figure out what are the top 100 agents doing that other people aren't. And listings is at the top of the game for like 10 different reasons, right? And what's going to really happen, John, coming up, because of this NAR settlement that we haven't really felt the effect of yet. We have, but we haven't felt the full sting of it. Okay. Can you just imagine, and some markets are already swinging this way, when we're back to a multiple offer market where a property's getting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offers.
Yeah.
And every single, seller is going to want to look at a net sheet. Those days may be a while off. We may have 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, but they're coming back. And every seller wants to look at a net sheet, and they want to look and see what am I going to net, and agents are going to be competing by basically, dropping their commission. You know what I'm saying? On the buyer side. It's like, I can shave 1%. I'll do it for $500. I'll do it for, and people don't think that that's reality, but that's just where we're headed. You know what I'm saying? In a buyer's market, listings. In a seller's market, listings. In any market, listings. Okay. So I'm going to preach that, you know, till the cows come home. One of the big things that the reasons why we want to focus on listings is, in the research project, they found that it takes about 1/3 the amount of time to work a listing when highly leveraged, as it does to work a buyer, that same buyer. So I could work 30 listings in the same amount of time as 10 buyers. So, you know, it just becomes a no-brainer, and a lot of people shy away from it for the same reason they don't do luxury. They're just afraid. They're just afraid to bite into it. Yeah. But day one, my first deal was a listing. You know, my last deal in this planet will be a listing. Okay. Yeah. I've been doing listings. I took 21 listings my first 74 days in real estate. Okay. So I'm a lister. That's what I preach.
And I mean, I love that message. I'm right there with you. I mean, I'll be on that mountaintop with you, singing that, you know, screaming that, is really, you know, to get through to people. And I think you nailed it, man. It's just a scared. They just don't have the skills. They just haven't developed it yet. But once they do, then they're like, gosh, dang, I don't know why I didn't do this faster. I don't know why I didn't move over. So a lot of the team leaders I work with, and they're like, you know, I was like, listen, I said, everybody you bring in, you get them focused on listings, get them focused on listings, get them focused on listings, because the amplification is just, it's there. And I think it ties back into, you know, most agents tend to believe the answer to more production is more activity. And Knolly, why do you think that belief actually holds them back?
Well, I remember when I bought my first house, I was 26 years old, and it was on 10 acres, a big house, 6,000 square feet. And it was like a Victorian colonial type house, right? So beautiful. It had the 4 big columns on it and everything. And when we closed, I was 26 years old when I bought it. Paid $400,000. I didn't put $1 of my own money down. Okay. Back then you could do stuff like this. Okay.
You could get away with that back then. Yes.
That was a whole, of course I had a 12% interest rate. Okay. 12% interest. When I bought the house, the guy, Lloyd Steele, the owner, that sold it to me, he says, hey, I got a tractor out front, and there's a guy coming to pick it up. You know, he bought it, but he hasn't come pick it up yet. I said, no problem, man. Just leave it there. Nowadays, I know that's not probably the right answer, right? But you know, I was a little kid. I said, hey, no problem. So here, I've got the reason I bought the house, John, was because I was renting an office building for my record label, 3,000 square foot office building. And then I was renting a house. I wasn't even thinking about buying a property. But I said, well, heck, if I buy this property, I could combine everything, right? So that's basically what we did. And I said, hey, if the president of the United States can work from home, why can't I? So that's what we did. So I'm in the house maybe 2-3 days. We're unpacking. I mean, I'm grungy, bro. I probably hadn't showered in 2 days. I got these cutoff shorts, tank top, and I'm unpacking, you know, whatever. And so one of my employees comes around. He says, hey, this guy's coming to pick up the tractor. I said, no problem. Just tell him where it is. Here's the keys, whatever. And he says, no, but he said he wants to meet the owner. I said, man, I'm real, you know, and it was way at the, 10 acres. You got to walk all the way to the front of the property to meet this guy. So I said, man, just tell him to take the thing. And he said, no, but he really wants to meet you, bro. I said, so I walk over there, man, grungy, I probably had to throw a shirt on, whatever. And I walk up to him. I said, yes, sir. And this dude, John, if you was to see him, I mean, you've been to Texas. I'm talking about a crusty old Texan.
Yep, got it.
Dude looked like he was born on a tractor. I'm talking about he had dirt under his nails. His boots were encrusted with mud. I mean, this is a good old boy, right? So he looked at me. He said, yes, sir. He says, I'm trying to meet the owner here. I said, yes, sir. Pleased to meet you. How can I help you? He said, no, sir, I don't think you understand. What I was asking you is, could I meet the owner of the property? And it's the first time I thought about it. I looked at him, I said, Well, sir, I'm the owner. And he looked at me. His eyes got so big. Now I'm thinking back. I've seen pictures of myself at 26. Okay, here's this skinny black kid. Okay, come up, half dressed, and his eyes got big as saucers. John. He looked at me, and he looked at the house in the distance. I mean, beautiful, beautiful. And then he looked at me again, and he looked at the house, and he just put his head down and shook his head. He just shook his head. He said, a man could work his whole life and not get something like that. And that's the first time I really saw the house, John. I looked at the house and I looked at this dude and I said, somebody along the way told him that if you scrimp and scrape and hustle and grind and you go get it, you work 80-hour weeks, one day you might get something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But my mindset was, what's up? I need something like that. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? So it really comes down to your belief. That's all it is. That's the only difference. It's the belief. I was the shyest kid in school. Okay. I was the shyest kid in school. When I was 7 years old, I had a speech impediment. My mom had to hire a speech therapist because people couldn't understand what I was saying. Talk like I had marbles in my mouth. So I was anyway, the point is, I never completed past ninth grade. I'm just throwing facts out. Okay. I got my GED, went to college, dropped out of that, but I've always had the belief. That's the reason why I made my first million at 29 years old. Okay. And I've made millions and millions since then because I know I can do it. I believe I can, And so it really boils down to, John, belief. A lot of people believe that they have to hustle and grind. I'm into ease and flow, not hustle and grind. Okay. Now there is a time to hustle and grind. We all know that. Okay. If I'm building a house, I'm hustling and grinding. If I'm literally in building a house today, I might be hustling and grinding for 9 months building that house. But at some point I should be able to live in it and relax. You know what I'm saying? So when we're building our businesses, we're going to put in 80-hour weeks. It's no problem. But at some point you got to be able to live in what you've built. Okay. Otherwise you own a job and not a business.
That's so good. That is so good. I love that ease and flow. And
I choose to make it fun and easy. That's another one I like.
It's understanding that we live in a creative world and we've got this blank canvas and we get to design the business and the life that we want to live.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So Knolly, on the listing side, because I'm with you, every ounce of my being knows that is that's it. This game, return on time, there's nothing more than motivated, maybe even 1 foot in the desperate bucket with sellers. But when we look at these 5 big rocks, what does a simplified, simple listing-based business look like day to day? And how is that different from what most agents are actually doing right now?
Yeah, let me give the 5 big rocks first, because people are like, man, when's this guy gonna get to them rocks, man? I want to know the rocks. Give me the rocks. All right, so I'm gonna give the big rocks real quick. So these are the 5 things that I say you absolutely should definitely do or strongly consider doing. Number 1, you got to move from default to design. You got to move from default to design. That's the number 1 thing that real estate agents have to do. And what does that even mean? That means that most agents are living in default. Okay. They haven't designed just what you just said, John. They haven't designed their life. Okay. They haven't sat down and said, this is the life that I desire and require. What they haven't realized is that the way the universe works is like a waiter. The waiter comes over and says, John, sir, what do you have? And you're looking at the menu and you're like, well, you know what? I'm going to have a hamburger with French fries. Okay. And I want this like this, and I want it cooked medium, whatever. Then the waiter's like, okay, I got that. Anything else? No, scratch that. What I really want is lasagna. I see y'all got lasagna on them. Oh, no problem. I can change that for you. You want lasagna? Okay. Then he puts down lasagna. Okay. What else you want with it? And then he starts to walk away. You're like, hold on a minute, man. I don't want lasagna. I really want this. And then he starts writing that down. Then you say, no, I don't want that either. I want this. At some point, John, he's going to be like, sir, when you're ready to place your order, I'll be back. Right?
Make a
that's how the
decision
universe
is what he's
works.
thinking. Yes.
That's how the universe works, man. If agents are putting in, I want to do this. Then next week they want to do that. Then this shiny object over here. Then that. And finally, like the universe is like, hey, dude, when you're ready to place your order, call me. Okay. It's like jumping in a taxi cab and, you tell them to go here, then you're there and then dude gonna kick you out of the car at some point. The reality is you have to know what you want, man. What do you desire and require? Because what you desire desires you. Okay. So what that means is you map out a vision for what it is that you desire and require. And then you start to manifest that because that's the way it works. You start to place your order. Okay. When you one of the great books for this is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. That's a really good primer to kind of understand what I'm talking about. But the first thing is we've got to move from default to design. Too many agents are living their life by default and they're getting default results. When you design your life, that's when everything changes. I remember when I first got into real estate and my coach, she said, what's your goal? I was like, man, I'm going to do 20 deals. I thought, surely I'm hot if I do 20 deals. The average agent I heard does 6, I'm doing 20. You know what my coach told me? I was 8 months in the business. She said, Knolly, why wouldn't you do 100? You know what I did? I laughed. It was just ludicrous. It was so beyond my scope of reality. It was just dumb. Why would I even want to do that? But she said, Knolly, I guarantee you, if you decide to do 100 deals instead of 20, you'll work half as much. You'll work half as much doing 20 deals as you will doing 20 deals. And I didn't understand at the time, John, but now I do. It's called leverage, because you got money to pay for stuff. And you really, with a listing-based business, there's only 3 to 5 things. I have a 46-step listing system, and there's only 3 to 5 things that require a license. Okay. So I leverage everything else out. And I have people that do everything else. So big rock number 1 is move from default to design. Okay. That's big rock number 1. Big rock number 2 is that you got to do the 2. Okay. That's very simple. Do the 2. That means every single day you're going to do 2 hours of lead generation. Okay. And that's every day, except when you're first starting out, we're going to say 6 days a week. Eventually you want to do that 4 days a week. Once you're reaching your goals, 4 days a week, you're sitting down, you're doing lead generation for 2 hours a day. Okay. And so, and that's very specific how you do that, as well. So in my books, I kind of carve out, what do you do during that lead generation time? We can unpack it as well. But number 3 is, I'm trying to get through these, John, because
No, you're doing great. This is awesome. Keep rolling.
Number 3 is you've got to set up your sphere of influence. You've got to. So many, the reason why 86% of, according to National Association of Realtors, 86% of sellers say they would use the same agent again, but we already know from statistics that only 9 to 11% actually do. Okay, so that's the equivalent of having a 4.5-star rating at closing down to a 1/2 star rating. Okay, if you're on a 5-star, would you eat at a 1/2 star restaurant? Like if you looked it up on Google and they're averaging 0.5 stars, not even 1 star, like you wouldn't eat there. We're not trying to get sick.
You wouldn't eat there. No,
I got to go to work tomorrow. I'm not eating at that place, right? So, but the reality is, if you were to scale it out, dropping from 86% to 11%, that's like a 1/2 star. On a 5-star rating, that's a 1/2 star. On a 10-star rating, it's 1 star, right? So the reality is, too many agents are doing that to themselves because they haven't mapped out their SOI and they're not staying in touch with those people. That's 70% of your paycheck comes from that group. According to National Association of Realtors, 70%, it's actually over 70% as of the 2025 study, more than 70%, like 72%. They got their listing agent from, a past, a referral or just word of mouth, church, or another agent referred them. It's going to be SOI based, 70% of your business. So you got to map that out, master it, And if you cannot be consistent with that, and you're not going to be consistent, then have a VA do it. You know, I teach how to do it both ways. I prefer you to do it, but if you're not going to, leverage it. So that's step three, or rock three. Rock four, if I was to say, hey, these are the 5 things that you absolutely have to do to succeed in this business, is to set up a farm. You have to have a geo farm. You have to have an area. It could even be a digital farm, okay? But you have to have an area that you're known in. Where you run for mayor and you got it on lock. I remember my last neighborhood before I moved from the United States of America to Puerto Rico, which is just the United States. Is that even? No, it's a territory, not even U.S. It's not even united, right? But I moved to Puerto Rico and I didn't do any deals for like 3 years. But before that, I had 50% market share of my neighborhood. So I mean, if we had 10 listings in that neighborhood, 5 of them were mine. Okay. And it took time, but I teach people how to farm for free. It doesn't have to cost you a dime, even for your postcard campaign. Okay. So that's number 5. You want to have your farm set up, your geographic area. And then the final one is you want to delegate everything you can. That's number 5. Delegate everything you can. There are a few things that, and you're a big preacher of this, John. I mean, if you could delegate brushing your teeth, you would, right? But I mean,
100%.
you're a big proponent of this. So delegate. And so my big question to myself every single day is, how can this be done without me? How can this be done without me? So as I'm doing a task, I'm like, how could this be done without me? And lo and behold, John, I've learned that actually I'm the bottleneck in my business. If you can just get me out of the way, actually stuff gets done. You know what I'm saying? So, and a lot of agents don't feel that way. They feel like they have to be the superhero. They throw a cape on, and I'm going to show up for my client, and they're going to think that I was on a flight one time. I was going to Funnel Hacking Live. It was 2017. I'm a big funnel guy. I'm big into go high level now. I thought I would never be like, you log into ClickFunnels like 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day. I said, I'll never do that. Now let's go high level. But the point is, I was going to this conference 2017, and this guy's sitting at the window seat. I'm sitting in the aisle seat, Josie. My wife's sitting in the middle. My wife, Josie. So this guy kept looking at me like this. And then he'd look away. Then he'd look at me. And peripheral vision, you're like, man, this dude.
Yeah, you see it.
Oh, man, this guy's crazy or something. We might have to switch seats. It's Southwest. We could do that back then. So I'm like, man, I don't know this guy. So he kept looking like this. And finally he said, hold on a second. Do you sell real estate? I said, yes, sir. He said, do you by any chance wear a cowboy hat? I said, yes, sir. I reached under the seat, put my cowboy hat like that. He said, are you Knolly Williams? I said, yes, sir, I am. He said, you sold my house. I said, pleased to meet you, sir. What's your name? I didn't know this guy from any other passenger on the plane, okay? I had a 30-minute phone, and that's still the way I list homes today. I had a 30-minute one-time phone call with this guy. That was the extent of my involvement in the sale of his home. And when we got off the plane, and he was going to Funnel Hacking Live too. We both were, nerds. So when we got off the plane, my wife was like in baggage claim. She was like, interview him. So I did a quick interview with him. And I asked him a question. I said, do you, because I always teach my coaching clients, houses don't have to be seen to be sold. Okay. I have 11 listings right now. I haven't seen any of them. Okay. I take that back. There's like one that I've actually, no, two that I've actually seen. The rest of them, I haven't seen them at all. And so I asked the guy, I said, during the interview, I said, his name is Horatio. I said, Horatio, do you feel like having me personally involved in the transaction, like from start to finish, or any additional involvement, would it have created a better outcome for the sale of your home? You know what he did, John? I was petrified. He looked up like this and he looked this way. He said, I can't see how it could have been any better by having me involved. Now that's mortifying for most agents because that's an ego blow. Like not having me involved is just what don't you know who I'm this Knolly Williams, fool. No, forget about all that, you know. But it's very freeing, man. That's the reason why my last year in production, I did 153 deals as a solo agent. I was very highly leveraged. I had three non-licensed assistants and one licensed. So those are my five, man, my five big rocks. They don't seem like much, but I'm telling you, if a person will rock those, okay, no pun intended. If you rock those five, you'll have a very, very, you know, you fill in the gaps, but you'll have a very, very successful career if you don't forget those five.
Of the five, Knolly, which one do you see agents neglect the most?
Delegation. Oh, well, probably the most neglect is lead generation, because you know agents only ever have two problems ever in their whole career. And you've seen it, I've seen it. Their number one problem is money. They don't have enough. Okay. Once they have enough money, so the way we solve the money problem is lead generation. Okay. Lead generation leads to contracts. Okay. Which leads to closings. All right. You know, contracts lead to pendings to lead, you know, or listing agreements lead to pendings that lead to closings. So, so that's the number one thing is lead generation. But then once an agent is making enough money, they're making good money. I was talking to an agent once. There was 480 agents in the office. That office transitioned to EXP. Okay. Out of Spring, Texas. And I was talking to their number one agent out of 480 some agents. And I asked her, I said, she was like, yeah, you know, I'm number one, da, da, da. I mean, she wasn't saying it that way, but I'm saying she was excited. You know, I'm like, I'm talking to them. I did a seminar and then I pulled her aside talking to her and she was like real happy and jovial and everything. I looked at her, I said, how much are you working? Man, her whole countenance changed. I mean, like she went from like bubbly to, she said, Knolly, I work all the time. I work all the time. So agents violate the rule when they're successful. They violate the rule of how can this be done without me? And then when they're not successful, they violate the lead generation rule. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I would say the number one is they don't. You show me any agent that's struggling, and I guarantee there is absolutely no way that they're lead generating 2 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. It's not happening. It's not happening. Okay. And they have no accountability. You know, they haven't hired John Kitchens. Okay. So they're on an island, man. And the worst person to be accountable to is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And you know, we all need it. And, you know, it was funny. Not, I was thinking about it this morning, right? Like we're in this design era, right? Like your number one is default to design, but right now it's like almost design, redesign as fast as everything is changing around us. But I was like, okay, who do I have holding me accountable, helping, you know, hold the mirror? Because we all have blind spots. Okay, I'm good in this discipline that's important in my life right now. I'm good. Oh, no, I'm not good. I need some help. Who can I go get to help me hold the mirror up, hold me accountable, keep pushing me, things that I don't know in this discipline that's important in my life right now. So it's just, you know, thinking through those things at all time. But I love where you have number one, because I feel so many people just default and that's the way it has been. That's the way it is. And it's like, that's not true. Like you live in such a creative world and you have to understand that like, this is probably one of the most creative times that we've ever lived in.
Yeah.
To really just stop and like, am I designing this the way that I want my life to be? And you've done that. Like, and I know we haven't even unpacked it. We've talked about it over, you know, multiple episodes over the last 5 years, 6 years that we've, you know, been, you know, on you know, talking about this, Knolly, is you've done a great job. And the example, like if you guys missed what Knolly just talked about, 11 active listings. I've only seen 2 properties. Like, in your head just cannot get around that. Like, you got to step back for a second and change your questions and change your life. And I wrote that question down. You said it earlier. It was something that you a different question. You just ask a different question, like the delegation. How
Yeah.
can this be done without me? That's a different
Right.
question than
Yeah.
the question you're thinking. So, like, how do you want this to be? Change your questions, change your life, and understand that you have such a great opportunity right now with the blank canvas to design the way you want. Just design these aspects and these rocks into your month, your week, your days.
Yeah. Well,
You're,
and let me say this too. When I say live by design, that really goes pretty deep, and I have a lot of that philosophy in my books as well. But let me just say it this way. So I've done pretty much all the personality profile, Myers Briggs. I've done the AVA, the DISC, and I understand how I operate. I understand how my mind thinks, how it works, what my default is. And so I design everything around who I am as a person. Okay. So if like I don't do cold calls because I'm not a high D. I have almost zero D. And so now there are agents that I coach that do cold calls and they're really good at it because they're high D people. And so what happens is when you understand who you are and you design your life around who you are, that is going to be a life that's fun. You know what I'm saying? Because you're never doing anything that you don't like to do. I remember one time Don Hobbs was telling a story. I think it was Don Hobbs about this guy. There's all kinds of ways to generate leads, right? Gene Frederick in his new book, Be the Legend, has just some incredible stories of different ways that people generate leads. But one of my favorites was from Don Hobbs. He said that there was a guy that the way he generated most of his high luxury leads, listings, was all he did was he volunteered at a school one day a week. Okay. And he would scoop the mashed potatoes this week. Next week, he was scooping out the beans. He worked the lunch schedule for the kids. Okay. So everybody knew Mr. So-and-so, right? He's the guy that sells houses, but he also gives me my mac and cheese. And sometimes he really puts it on thick. Okay. So then guess what? They're all telling their mom and dad. They always hearing about this guy. Right. So when they need to go sell their house, who are they going to call? The guy that gives my kid the baked beans, the beanie weenies. Okay. The pizza guy. Right. Because that's what he volunteers at the school once a week and he gets all of his leads that way. Now, there's so many different ways that, you and I can, till the cows come home, talk about different ways to generate leads, but that works for him. Okay.
Yeah.
For some, they would hate doing that. All right.
Yeah.
But it's not hard.
No, it's just time. And it's okay being, the guy in the lunch line. Like that's an ego play too. That's awesome.
That's it. It's like, hey, you got to wear an apron and a hairnet. Okay. That's it. What's up?
Yeah.
But kids love him. Kids love him. And they tell their parents. Parents start talking about real estate. Then they come and tell him. And then he's like, okay, well, make sure your mom and dad get it. And kids have a lot of influence on their parents. A lot of people don't know that.
Ton.
He knows all the kids' names, their pets' names, all that kind of stuff. And that goes a long way.
It does go a long way.
He's good at his
that's
job.
really, really powerful. Yeah, it was great. Shaking hands, kissing babies, helping nurture deep on relationships. Knolly, what is the one thing, right? An agent listening to this, they go through the 5 things. They're like, yeah, I got to do them all. Yeah, I need to really, overhaul, really, really take a deep look at this. But as an agent, you're like, okay, right things, right order. Knolly, where do I start? Like, what's the one thing that I need to take action on this week, not this quarter, not even this week, today? Like today, what is the one thing that I need to take action on that's going to get me down this path that I can start building momentum of shifting my business in this direction? What is the one thing?
I would say the one thing for that is really understand who you are. So that you can start to design your life. Okay. Understand who you are, what makes you happy, what creates a deep, desirable, fulfillment for you. Really understand that. It's so funny, John. There's so many agents that I'm coaching them, right? And I have a coaching group, an inner circle, all this. And a lot of even my inner circle, like they've been indoctrinated with my all the stuff that I hit them with.
Mhm.
And I was talking to a guy the other day, Simon. I said, "Hey, what's your disc again?" Because I have all their discs on a graph, but I was in the moment of, he was in the hot seat, so I didn't have time to pull up his disc. I just wanted him to tell me. He was like, "Well, I think I'm," and it happens all the time, bro. I talked to another one. They're like, "Well, I think this. I think I'm that." You got to know who you are
Mm.
in order to have the kind of life. I took my disc test when I was 19 years old for the first time. Okay. That's who told me who I was going to marry. Okay. It told me what kind of business, how to run my operation. It's to me, it's everything. You got to know who you are, how you operate, and then you design your life around that, because that's your superpower. Understand what if you don't know who you are, you don't know your superpower, because
Yeah.
your superpower can open doors for you. Okay. So I would say that's the one thing to really, from a takeaway. I have a book called Discovering Your Divine Destiny, which is, I've made it now free through my nonprofit. And it's a lot of people don't like it because it's like 101 questions to get to really know who you are. Most people don't want to know. They get scared to know who they're like. Oh, but
Yeah.
I've been on this personal development journey. Why? Because when I was a kid, you know, I I was told things like, "Hey, you'll never amount to anything. You're worthless," by my parents. Okay, and so I've been on this journey, and I'm like, no, I think I am. I do have value. I am worth something, and so that's the reason why I kind of wanted to know how I operate, who am I, that kind of thing. But I think too many people aren't curious enough about that.
I love that, Nolly. What would you say besides the disc? What would be the other top two assessments that's going to give you a little more insight to who you are that you would
The
recommend?
Genius test is one that I like more than the
I do
disc. It's like
too.
the disc on steroids. Roger
Yeah.
Hamilton came up with that. And then I like the AVA. It's maybe a little outdated now. There's another one, Core, I think it is.
Mhm.
CORE, if I'm not mistaken. That's really, really good. I haven't done enough. Oh, you know what I love? Like what I really love, but this is kind of woo-woo, human design. Okay. I don't know if a lot of you have done human design. That's where they take your birth date, what time you were born, what city. I mean, it's a little out there. Okay. But I mean, it is bang, bang, bang. It nails it pretty good. Okay.
Well,
So human design is another one I've done.
I don't think it's too woo woo Nolly, because you look at like Morgan House, his the psychology of money, and I know this
Yeah,
is a big thing for you. And he even talks about it in there to where like you can really pinpoint your relationship with money to your birthday when you were born.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I love that. So human design, you said genius test. What is that?
The Genius Test is a guy named Roger Hamilton. He wrote uh, a book called The Millionaire. I think it's called The Millionaire Master Plan, something like that. And he came up with a test that actually breaks us down into 8 personality profiles instead of 4.
Okay.
It's really, really good. It goes into, you could be a steel genius, you could be a blaze genius, and so on. So he has 4 geniuses and 8 personality profiles in that. It's called the Genius Test. Basically, is what it is.
Mm,
But I've
okay.
taken them all, man. I've taken the passion test. Anyone I can get my hands on. But I kind of know, I'm wired like an engineer. I'm a nerd. Okay. When I was 12 years old, I was taking computer programming. Okay.
Mm,
But I'm the type of guy, John, that if it doesn't interest me, I'm not gonna engage. That's why I didn't really do well in school, but I'm successful in other things that I want to do.
yeah,
You understand what I'm
yeah,
saying? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's awesome. Nolly, I mean, I can't thank you enough. Always just such a joy, and there's so much value to extract. And I can't thank you enough for really pouring into, this whole these conversations, the expert mentor series, what 322 episodes deep now. And it's just
Insane.
really
Amazing.
if I'm going to put, hey, what is expert mentors, what is it all about? Just go watch all of the episodes with Knolly Williams, because that's really the whole intent of these conversations. You nail it every time. I can't thank you enough. You have a ton of resources, ton to give. How can agents get into your world, grab more of what you have to offer? How can they get access to you?
Yeah, so I would say probably the easiest way to just kind of see what I'm about is go to my website, which is knolly.com, KNOLLY.com. If you want to kind of dive into the effective strategies for generating listing leads for free. I've got 27 of them in this book. It's a free book, free plus shipping. And so that is triplemylistings.com. And I just want to say, John, you talked about what's the one thing agents can do to get into that momentum, but what's the one thing they could do to stay in momentum? Get a coach, hire a coach. You got to have a coach. You have to have a coach, because otherwise I have blinders. I have 3 or 4 coaches at any one time, because I, just like you, have blinders on and I can only see what I can't see. I have blind spots. And so my coach is like, Knolly, and they don't play. They're not yes people. Okay. They're like, Knolly, come on. Nah. So you really, to stay in in the high lane, you got to have a coach. You got to have a man like John Kitchenson in your corner for sure. 100%.
Knolly, you're amazing, man. I can't thank you enough. I'm so, like, obviously grateful for the EXP opportunity and the business model. But what I'm more grateful about by making the transition over to EXP in 2017 is the relationship and the connections and the humans I've been able to meet, through this journey. This is why, continue with the Expert Mentor series, is just to be able to connect and have conversations with individuals like yourself. So, brother, I can't thank you enough, man, again, for really, jumping in, pouring into the conversation, into the community. And I know we'll keep doing it. We're not going to slow down. That's for sure.
That's right. All right, brother. Love you,
all right,
man.
Appreciate you. Love you. Enjoy the trip. You guys have fun, create those magical moments, and we'll see you soon. See you guys.